Hey everybody, this is Cindy Allen, Editor-in-Chief of Interior Design Magazine and at the Cindygram. Okay, I'm sharing a quote I want you to listen to. The sun never knew how great it was until it hit the side of a building. That was spoken from one of the greatest architects of the 20th century, known as the architect of light, Louis Kahn. Fast forward to today, and we still know the power of light on all our spaces, both inside and out, and the enormous effect on all of us. I'm really excited today. We'll be discussing light as experiential lighting through the lens of biophilia, health and wellness, and new lighting tools in the market, as we have two amazing thought leaders, Rick Cook, founder and partner of Cook Fox Architects, and the Cecilia Ramos, Senior Director of Lutron Electronics. Hello.
Hi, Cindy.
Hi,
Thanks
Cindy.
for having us.
Hi, it's so nice to see you guys. Cecilia, I don't know an architect that isn't crazy about you, and then come to hear that you were an architect.
Yeah, I came from the ranks, so it's nice to be in a position now where I can support architects and understand their needs and wants. So I'm happy to be here.
That's amazing. Fantastic. Okay. So we have a lot to get through today, a lot of really goodies, as I like to say. So let's get started. First of all, let's talk about the spaces we're in right now and our current situation and how we are learning a lot about lighting from doing all this Zooming. Rick, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm here in Sneedon's Landing. This is our home on Woods Road in Sneedon's Landing. And one of my favorite parts about the house, besides the connection to nature, is that Cecilia and Lutron and Ketra, we work with them to create a circadian rhythm for the house. So even these crazy 70s track light fixtures that we left in the house, we re-lamped with the Ketra Lutron system. So we're able to run the whole house on a circadian rhythm. So the color temperature of the light inside is the same as outside. So we're always striving to make that connection indoors and outdoors. And now we can actually do it with the color temperature. But the really cool thing too is my wife has a Renaissance painting. We lived in Florence when we were first married. So
Wow.
There's a picture and there's a color of light in Tuscany that's very specific. So we stood there with somebody on a laptop and tuned the lighting until it felt like the Tuscan light. So this gives amazing opportunities for curators too. So it was an emotional thing. We didn't have a spectrometer. It felt right. It was an emotional connection that you had to the way the painting was supposed to read. And then we carved that out of the program that runs over the day. So that's where I am, and my little thing about the lighting and the catcher.
First of all, that's amazing. Cecilia, every single architect should be your advocate the way you just the first 2 seconds of our interview. Amazing. One thing that Cecilia and I were talking about, which is so true, that we're on all these Zoom calls,
Yeah.
and we have to think about what we look like. And if I turned my computer around, I've got 3 lights going, and I'm actually getting at this time of day, Cecilia, what do you think? There's all this natural light. It always comes in around 4 o'clock. So it starts dippling and doing nice things, but you need the lighting, that's for sure.
You need the lighting, and it's funny that you say that because I've always been kind of a lighting geek. I came from that world and work in it now. And what I've discovered that even being at home, I'm discovering new ways to use it. And so I think there was an early on article in the New York Times right around March, early April, where Tom Ford basically was educating the masses on how to light themselves well while doing video calls. And he had a very simple recipe, which was a front lighting that was diffuse, a white surface onto which that front lighting would reflect down and then bounce back up, and then make sure you have a little bit of light in the background to give yourself a glow. So, of course, working with Lutron and Ketra, I took my Ketra bulbs and I've been experimenting to see, the right way to illuminate myself on video calls. And right now, I have that set up here, and I can easily kind of, tune it down to warm myself up or go cooler, make it daytime conditions.
Very cool.
I'm going to settle in at 3,000 Kelvin and gave myself a fake tan.
You're definitely glowing over there, Cecilia, for sure. That's very cool. So what are you using to? You're just using. Can you show everybody what you're using to adjust the coolness or the warmness?
The coolness of the worms is just a keypad. That's super easy. Exactly. And then frankly, I mean, I shouldn't show you all my tricks, but
no, show us.
Give you a sneak peek preview. I've got just a par lamp. So all that to say that it's not super difficult to set something like this up. And with being a lot of fun, it's also, it helps you look good for these calls.
So, first thing is like, right, we're in a different kind of situation, which is also we're at home. And so there are a lot of lessons to be learned. Rick, when did you set up your house to be like that? How long has it been?
March 15th.
Oh, you just set it up. So what kind of changes? It must be amazing, right?
Well, really what happened, I'm sitting at my dining room table because I like to be surrounded by nature. So I have floor to ceiling glass and I'm sitting at my dining room table and I get to look out at the same time. And it worked out pretty well. I have an office, but somehow I just like being up here a little bit better. But we've been remote since then. Yeah,
no, I find that the funny thing is that like for any of us who are in our like kind of weekend homes, summer homes or whatever, there's typically more glass than in our apartments in the city. Yeah. And yet it makes it hard to set up where you're gonna do your Zoom calls because all that beautiful back lighting from outside just blows us all out, right, Cecilia?
Well, I mean, it's amazing. I'm looking at Rick and he looks picture perfect between the kind of table lamp and the spot lamp and then the shades on the windows. And so, I mean, I think that's one thing that we always have to consider. It's not just the electric light that we live in, it's also controlling the daylight. And so be that with motorized shades or whatever, you got to marry those two together to get that balanced calibration. That might be one thing for one event and something different for something completely different. So for a Zoom call, maybe your shades are down, Rick, and then as you finish the Zoom call and you start typing emails, you want a little bit more light and you raise them. So I think it's that flexibility of controlling all those elements of light that creates the environments that we feel most comfortable in.
Yeah, absolutely. Rick, so tell us, so you guys were selected to design the Lutron Experience Center, which is very exciting. It just won an NYC by Design Award. Congratulations.
Thank you.
But I want to know from you what you learned, because it really is, when I went through it all, it is like, first of all, it's an amazing tool for everyone to learn how to use the light, but it's so much fun as well.
It is. Well, for me, I've been a little bit obsessed with the fact that we experience our spaces with all of our senses. So even though we all want to get in your magazine, it's a two-dimensional format, and it can't possibly convey what places feel like, what the experience is like. And that all started 20 years ago with a project called the Center for Wellbeing, when we started exploring biophilic design. But at the same time, Courtney Ross, and thank you for publishing it back then.
Yes, that was a long time ago.
2002, in fact.
Yeah.
The founder came from an art background, and the funding came from media. So we started looking at how to light somebody to look good under the camera, so the kids looked good when they played basketball. And then we started talking about what the place smelled like, and baking flatbreads. And we moved the cafe to the second floor so could hear the birds chirping. So it was, and you took your shoes off and you got a tactile feedback. So this idea that you fully experience the spaces you're in and you remember them with all of your senses, I think lighting is like that. And so when Cecilia and the team asked us if we would help them accomplish their experience center, for me, it was really about, you have to go there and you have to experience it. You have to feel what it's like to have the light change, or have a painting really change completely in front of your eyes by the change of the light. And we've all had concepts like presets in lighting, but the combination of Lutron, we were pretty excited when they bought Ketra, because Ketra was the light engine that we said, this is the light engine that's going to do everything. It's going to allow curators to tune paintings. It's going to do circadian rhythm, but it didn't have the technological backup. So when Lutron bought Ketra and put those two together, we just really wanted to help them pull off an experience center where somebody like you could come, and it wasn't about looking at it, but feeling it change.
Right. It was the experience. It's a great name for it, because, right, you go into it and you're completely transported. And I think, for an architect that hasn't become obsessed with lighting the way you have, and by the way, many are, which is a good thing for Lutron, but, you learn a lot from just being in that experience center. So thank you for that. What's your favorite part?
Actually, for me, the favorite part is just when they run it and they run the full range of color temperature, and then who's ever running the show says, this is the exact same light engine, what you might call light bulb. It's the exact same thing. It's purely programming. And because we've done things where we change color temperatures of lamps and we'll put it on dual tracks and we'll do things like that. But the fact that you can go all the way from intensely red all the way to cool blue, completely smooth, all from the exact same light engine, the same light fixtures, what we would call light fixtures or light bulbs. That's my favorite part. I think.
Yeah, and Cecilia, it must have been like just a completely different experience for you as somebody representing the company to be able to bring people there and have them get really excited about the tools.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those projects that it just came together, and the team was fantastic. We had Rick Cook and his team, and we had Steve Margulies and on lighting. And when we kind of programmed the whole thing, we decided to, storytell via narrative. And so, as Rick said, as opposed to kind of just putting objects on the wall, it was you sit there. And I always like to say, to get light, you have to marinate in it. Like you have to actually soak in it and understand it. And to see, like, Rick designed this beautiful curved white plaster wall, which becomes the spine of the space. And throughout like a sequence of maybe 20 scenes that we kind of, dance through, and you see the whole space transform. And so you see it transforming not just in color temperature, but also in the directionality of the light. So at some moments that wall flattens, and other moments it kind of gets sculpted. And I think in bringing architects and designers into the space, like they get it, as Rick says, like they see it and they get it. And they understand the like full potential of what light can do, or maybe not the full, because we're just scratching the surface. Ultimately, it's up to the designer to really take it to the next level.
That's right.
But we're teasing, the power of light in painting space, and that's fun to see people's eyes kind of pop and say, "Whoa, this is a new tool that I could have."
Yeah, by the way, I love that. You even have a little hospitality suite in there, and I'm always wondering, like, be staying over.
We don't Airbnb it, I promise.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And
thought about it a couple times.
You did. Well, congratulations. It's a beautiful project and really a great representative of what you can do with light, right? And I love that then you just said, okay, I'm going to take that home right now and I'm going to make changes. Now we have some more light applications that we're going to talk about, but Cecilia, there are some new tools out there for designers to work and control light. Can you share some of it?
Yeah, I mean, interestingly enough, I think the needs of light moving forward are different than they were 3 months ago. And it was quite opportune, in fact, because we just recently launched a new light control system called Athena, which is essentially light and lighting control and shades all married together with the Ketra light engine as a possibility, but you could have any other light engine you want. And, when we were envisioning this, it was a simple, easy to use, flexible system that really puts the power of kind of this lighting design in the designer's hands. So what does that mean? You can set up your lighting, and then the architect or the lighting designer via an app can make all these scene changes, dial it in, get it just right. And as we find ourselves, again, kind of reconsidering our architectural spaces as we re-enter the workforce and go from our homes back into the environment, to have a system like that, which allows the utmost flexibility, whether that's flexibility in scenes or flexibility in who can program it. And then also just keeping it super basic and simple. I think that's one of the big ones that we're excited to kind of bring forth. And I think in terms of the Ketra light that we've been talking about, which is this color temperature changing fixture that also does saturated colors should you want. I think the possibilities of what that can do are just, the surface is just being scratched. Every day I learn new applications and new creative ways of using it from designers. And I think that's a tool that we're going to see just take it to the next level.
I remember being in the Experience Center, showroom Experience Center, and really getting excited when you were showing what you can do to highlight art in the best way, like Rick, like you were saying, with that Renaissance painting. So there are a couple of projects that we can talk about. One, the Art Institute of Chicago. Can you tell us a little bit about what Ketra did?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the possibilities of art with Ketra lighting are like boundless, but in the Art Institute of Chicago specifically, it was a curatorial restoration move where they had, a 16th century sculpture made out of wood of St. Catherine Catherine. And when they were illuminating with typical lights, they found that the complexion was quite chalky and gray, and it didn't kind of resonate historically to what that would have looked like hundreds of years ago. And so the curators played with the Ketra light and ultimately dialed in a mix of color temperatures, but also a kind of facet of light called vibrancy, which is, what peaks of wavelengths of light do you have in a white light? So white light's ultimately the amalgamation of all colors. And so if in a 3000 Kelvin light fixture you peak the reds, then you'll see the reds render more vibrantly. So anyways, using that technology and a bit of kind of in situ testing, they were able to kind of find that perfect recipe that restored that sculpture to its 16th century state, or a state that they felt was right for the sculpture in this day and time. So that was pretty cool.
Which was it? Was it cooler, warmer, mix? I know you said it was a mix.
Yeah, it was actually a mix of 2,850 and 2,700, I believe. So they had like one on the head, one on the body, one had a little bit more vibrancy. So again, you give them the tools and they find what's right.
I love that. By the way, I know you guys are geeking out about lighting, but it reminds me a lot of printing, because we're always talking about like how we're printing colors and what gets more blue and more, when we're getting more red on the printing. So I totally can geek out with you, even though I don't understand it as well as you all do. Okay, so there was another one, the Nelson Atkins Museum.
Right. So the Nelson Atkins Museum was a different application in the block galleries where they were illuminating Impressionist painting. So they have a beautiful Monet Water Lilies painting. And I think what's fascinating what they did there is that they're using it as a pedagogical tool. So as the curators walk people through the museum and storytell some of those paintings and all aspects of them, that they're able through an iPad to kind of dial in white light always, but white light that pops different colors and different layers of the painting in order to use it as a storytelling opportunity and educational opportunity. So, I mean, if you think about, Monet as a painter in Giverny, he was painting in broad daylight. So that's another way to kind of look at light in art, which Rick alluded to in his Tuscan painting. You could also dial it in to be the light in which the painting was conceived, or you could light it as you want now in the Contemporary Gallery Museum. So lots of options, and I love kind of thinking through where it can go, but I would have never guessed that the Nelson Atkins would use it as a storytelling tool, which is quite neat.
No, that's amazing. And also, I think about hospitality, and it's kind of interesting for us too, because a lot of times we're getting photography of hospitality that casts very yellow, and which we hate to print like that. We're always trying to pull out the yellow, which might be better to be in it than the way that I need to use it, right?
Yep. In hospitality, I think we've seen a trend of lighting go very dim and warm, almost emulating incandescence,
right?
Which has, it has a perfect application, and in certain spaces, it's just what you need. But there was a recent museum project, Moxie in Seattle, where I think they implemented a lighting that felt like that. And ultimately, the lobby space was underutilized because during the daytime, with daylight coming in, the light felt too dim and too yellow. And so that was an application where, we came in as Ketra, relamped, which is great because it's an easy retrofit. And ultimately, they were able to, as Rick is telling the story of color temperature changing throughout the course of the day, have a brighter, whiter light by day, bring it down to those golden hues by night, and they saw like a complete transformation of use of that space. So with a small intervention, you can have a big impact.
Rick, the other architects in your office get as excited about it as you do?
More so.
Really?
Yeah. But the latest is that we have the new Google headquarters, and we're using View Glass, which sends a little bit of a blue tint on the inside. So now we're working with Ketra to see if we can cancel that out.
Because that's no good.
No good.
No good. That's no good. Okay. But Rick, I also wanted to congratulate you on the incredible office that you have. It's not, I don't often publish architects' own for many different reasons, but that project is really, really something special. And it also is close to your heart, right?
Yeah, thank you. uh, there was an awful price paid. So it is very close to our heart. And it's soul searching when you need to put your time and
Yeah.
money into a project where your clients come, because our job is to be advocates for what we believe is great design. So when you do your own studio, and we had left a studio that had 14-foot high ceilings, so we moved to a I guess a pre-war trophy would be what the Empire State Realty Trust would call it. So much lower ceilings. So we had to be so much more careful with light and redirect the light and bounce it off the ceiling so we get that indirect light back down. And then of course we rented it. We say we rented 3 terraces with a studio in between. So it was the terraces, given a home for our bees, given a new home for the apiaries, for the bees. But I think what Steve Marley's was a lighting designer for the Experience Center, and he used the term lighting as a full immersion experience. It's not just optical, it's you feel it, you're fully immersed. So we were trying to do the same thing in our studio, that you feel immersed in this idea about built biophilic design and connecting to nature.
I mean, it must have really changed how everybody feels, works, lives in that office.
It did. And one of the things, a lot of us really love polished concrete floors or hardwood floors, but our office is carpeted in part because of the acoustical quality of that it's quiet and meditative in its own way. And so those things were really, really important to us. And then interestingly, our friends at the IWBI, it was the first well gold. It was, of course, LEED platinum, but it was the first well gold in New York.
Huh?
And there were some things about the column of hand washing water that had to be however many inches is 10 inches, I believe. And I had to remake the sink. And I was so mad about it, thinking, this is crazy. This is crazy that we have to do this. But then think about how forward thinking they were about health and wellness now, because it's not just a fun idea of a fringe set of designers who really care about it. Everybody, we're all in the healthcare business now. Washing hands efficiently is really important. So they were spot on right, and they're way ahead of their time. So it was kind of interesting following the well standard, and living through that was important. And we just did their headquarters, IWBI's headquarters, which is the first well platinum version too.
That's amazing. And are you thinking about when you're getting back there, and what other changes you're going to have to make?
Yeah, we're going through the whole distancing, traffic patterns, everything you could imagine, changing as many things to touchless. And I think that's one of the things with lighting too, and technology. We'll get everything touchless we possibly can, and it will be what Paul Dara from Google calls no regret improvements. Like, maybe it wasn't a good idea we all touched the same elevator call button. Maybe it wasn't a good idea we all touched the same bathroom door handles. And so we'll have no regret improvements, I think, moving forward. So we're trying to do those things. We're really looking forward to getting back. I mean, we have great daylight there, and that's one thing that we've been doing with artificial light, trying to be as close to daylight as possible. It's why the circadian rhythm is so important. We have 4 exposures, so the sun is brilliant. I sit on one side of the studio in the morning because it's got a bright light to get my quiet time and get started, and I sit in the total opposite end of the studio because we get these beautiful sunsets over the Hudson. So I would move for the daily color temperature, and now we can do it with lighting, thanks to Cecilia.
Cecilia, don't you love that? He literally moves throughout the day.
Sunlight.
Sunlight. I think that's unbelievable.
We'll have to take our occupancy sensors and just kind of migrate the space. You can make sure that the lights are turning on and off as they go. They're battery powered, so you just move them and off they go.
That's amazing.
I do think on the wellness side and the health side, after post-COVID, which we alluded to, we've all been talking a lot about air filtration and bipolar ionization and HEPA filters and all these things. And we've made advances clearly in indoor air quality, but I think we're still on the verge of a big breakthrough on the quality of light and what it does to us. Like, we know connections to nature, lower stress levels, cortisol levels. And I think as we get higher quality light, we're going to be able to make people feel better.
I love what you were talking about earlier on, which is that this one project should have sort of changed the whole course of your career. Can you
Absolutely.
dig in a little bit more about that, the human connection that architecture and light can play?
Well, for me, the Center for Wellbeing was about a fusion of Eastern and Western concepts of health and fitness. So we really started all over again, and we were really focused in on how we experience space with all of our senses, not just the visual, not just beautiful magazines. And so it was about taking your shoes off and getting a tactile feedback. It was about smelling flatbreads, cooking in the ovens, but always it's about connecting to the best possible light. When you get up into the trees tops, the light changes, you open the windows and you hear the birds chirping. So it's always, I think architects have always been seeking the best, and artists have always been seeking the best possible light. And what we discovered there was that when we were filming people, they weren't looking as good as they were in natural light. So because the founder came from a media company, we brought in the best light, and they said, these are the light fixtures you need to use if you want people to look good on film. And so this idea that you could really change the way people look in situations like this by using different lights was kind of mind-blowing, that it wasn't just daylight, but you needed to tune the type of artificial light you had to make people look natural. But that really changed the course of my life, really, about this exploration that you can make people feel better by being connected to nature.
And, by the way, we have been connected all these years without really knowing it, because I published that first project. Now, all these years later, I was publishing your office, then you get the award for Lutron. Like, we were meant to be together today.
There you go. Thank you.
And do you think, I'm just curious, because I was, opening with Louis Kahn because we think of him as the master of light. Do you think at that time, it was more about the architecture? Like, the human experience and wellness is something that obviously is going to move us all forward. Do you think it was a different kind of experience back then?
I think it was almost always associated with natural light.
Right.
So Corb said, reveal something in light and I'll know what you mean. You'll move my soul when you reveal a form in light. Yes. And light has always been viewed as good. Follow the light, don't go into the dark.
Right.
Right. Biblical references to light. And so I think that this idea of revealing things in light, you see better in light, things are more transparent, they're more open. It's always been idealized. And architects and artists have always talked about it. Architects went out to the East End, architects went out to Provincetown. Somebody tells me that's because they got the light bounce off the ocean, off the cloud cover and back down on their work. So they got quantifiably better light. They just intuitively knew it. Right. So I think artists and architects, everybody visual is always talking about the light.
Yeah, I just sort of like, it made me think of like him like saying, we were talking about that forever. We just didn't use that terminology, right?
Yep, exactly.
Right, but they also didn't have you guys, Cecilia, either, which is kind of interesting how much more of a tool it can be.
Yeah, I think ultimately it's all about understanding what medium you have to work with, and then understanding the possibilities and importance of the control of it, right? Because you can throw light everywhere, but unless you're able to dial it and control it, it doesn't sing. And I think one of my favorite light books is a book called In Praise of Shadows, which is a Japanese story about the importance of light relative to darkness. And so I think that's always important, to remember that you got to control it to create those balances of light in moments of pause and darkness. That's
very, very beautiful. Okay, so we will pause on that in our light, not in the darkness, but in the light with our good friends at Lutron. Rick, fantastic to see you all. We should continue this. This should be the first of a series or something. There's something very, very good here. But thank you so much. Sorry we can't be together, but sending you all virtual hugs and go towards the light, right?
That's right. We will do that.
And thanks, Lutron. Thanks so much to our friends at Lutron. Thank you,
Cindy. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you, Cindy.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Cecilia. Bye-bye.